Let me introduce you to Peter H. Burnett, California's first governor. We'll be brief regarding the stats of Peter Burnett's early years. We explore these years to understand how this powerful yet inept politician came to authorize genocide in California. Simply, Burnett was born in Nashville, Tennessee on November 15, 1807, to a slave-owning family which went back several generations. As an adult in Missouri, Burnett bought 2 slaves of his own. As a young man in Missouri, he suffered a number of entrepreneurial losses and, heavily in debt, decided to move west. In 1843, he organized and led a wagon train to Oregon. In Oregon, Burnett went into politics. He was elected to the provisional legislature, served as judge of the provisional Supreme Court, and after Oregon gained territorial status in 1848, he was elected to the first territorial legislature. While he was in office, Burnett won passage of what he called an exclusion law, which banned African Americans from settling in the region. Yet, it allowed slaveholders to bring their slaves into the region and keep them for up to 3 years. This reversed an earlier prohibition against slavery. Under the statute, after 3 years, the slave would have to leave Oregon, the onus being on the slave, not the slaveholder, or face a whipping of up to 39 lashes. The law commanded whippings take place twice a year until the individual left Oregon. Known in Oregon history as Peter Burnett's Lash Law, it was abolished the following year. In 1848, Burnett left Oregon for the California goldfields, as he was still heavily in debt back in Missouri. There he met August Sutter, John Sutter's son, and through this relationship became the younger Sutter's land agent. This venture was a financial success, and when the city of Sacramento was fully established, Burnett was back in politics. In 1849, Burnett ran for governor of California and won easily. One of his first acts was to present this law to the legislature. Burnett urged enactment of an exclusion law against blacks as an issue of the first importance. Anyone opposing such a law, he told the legislators, was guilty of weak and sickly sympathy. In the day, California was home to numerous settlers and miners from slave states, many of whom had brought slaves with them to work the claims. The state had a high number of pro-slavery supporters. Burnett's Exclusion Act was only narrowly defeated. He moved on to additional shocking legislation. Burnett wanted the Pacific West to belong to white settlers of European descent. No Africans, no Chinese, no Native Americans, just white Europeans. In 1851, he turned his sights specifically on California's Native Americans and legislated their genocide through the perversely named law, Act for the Government and Protection of Indians. Burnett wrote that a war of extermination will continue to be waged between the races until the Indian race becomes extinct, must be expected. At one point, it was something in the neighborhood of $25 for a male body part, whether it was a scalp, a hand, or the whole body, and then $5 for a baby, child, or a woman. In many cases, they only had to bring in the scalp, and in other cases, the whole body was brought in to prove that they'd had this individual, they'd killed this person, and received their reward. Native Americans who were spared death were enslaved. White settlers took 24,000 to 27,000 California Native Americans as forced laborers, including 4,000 to 7,000 children. And on our right, we have the Southern California Slave Auction Building. Native Californians were sold here in auctions from about 1850 to the late 1860s. Here we have a report from the PBS program American Experience. It reads, there was a person up in Humboldt County who was found with a small child, a young Indian child, and they asked him, what are you doing with this child? He said, I am protecting him, he's an orphan. And they say, well, how do you know he's an orphan? And he said, I killed his parents. The genocide went on throughout the late 1840s and into the 1870s. For a number of reasons, Peter Burnett made himself unpopular and resigned as governor only 13 months into his administration. Burnett's Genocide Act did not change under subsequent California governors. Estimates vary, but it is believed at least 16,000 Native American people of all ages were hunted and murdered in California by the white militias of California. What the Spanish conquistadors started in the 16th century, states like California strove to finish. It's reported that in just 20 years, 80% of California's Native Americans were wiped out. Some died because of the seizure of their land, starvation, or diseases caught from new settlers, but at least 16,000 were hunted down and murdered. They were the victims of a genocide policy sponsored by the state of California and carried out by its citizens. It was genocide on the scale that happened to the Jews in World War II, in which 63% of the Jewish European population was murdered. Prior to European immigration from the East, the natives of California lived a reasonably healthy, productive life, free from intertribal warfare. Resources were so plentiful that infighting was not a need. As responsible stewards of the land, resources remained plentiful. The natives largely followed a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, moving around their area through the seasons as different types of food were available. It was an abundant place to live, and European immigrants believed its lands and resources should be theirs. The theft continues, but this time we can act differently. The Amah Mutsun natives lived on and cared for the land around Gilroy, California. At the heart of the land was Huristac, where the Mutsun people held their sacred services. Think their church, their Mecca, their Jerusalem. The Mutsun land was stolen, and their population numbers decimated through the actions of European immigrants backed by the Genocide Act. It became the Sargent Ranch, and the Mutsun lost all access to their spiritual site. In 2017, The ranch was sold off in a bankruptcy sale and purchased by a San Diego investment company. The investment company is currently seeking to develop a 320-acre open-pit quarry on the site, which will reap big profits for the company. But the Mutsun want their land back. Here we hear from Valentin Lopez, chairman of the Amah Mutsun tribe. Our tribe, which now owns no land within our traditional territory, draws a clear connection between today's threats to sacred sites and the legacy of colonial violence our people have endured. The destruction and domination of Amah Mutsun culture, spirituality, environment, and people never ended. It just evolved to the destructive and dominating projects that we see today. He continues, "We honor our ancestors by returning to those places where they had ceremony. For thousands and thousands of years, they fulfilled their sacred responsibilities to manage and protect those lands. Through no fault of their own, they were violently interrupted. We cannot let them or their responsibility be forgotten. We have a duty to continue to fulfill those responsibilities."